How's it going, everybody? My name is Antonio, and I'm on the barbecue this week with Drew Zimmerman, who's the CEO of Stallion Discoveries, which is an exploration company with uranium assets in the Athabasca Basin and a few gold assets that well, I guess I'll say a few words about them here in a second. Who's not here with us, though, is your financial advisor. This is going to be a conversation that's general and impersonal in nature, and more importantly, it's a discussion about uncertain future events that will include a lot of forward-looking statements and speculations about events that may or may not take place in the future. And we're also discussing the mineral exploration and extraction industry, which is one of the highest risk industries for people to employ capital in. And what that means for mom and pop investors is that you will lose your money if you don't do more research. Again, this is sort of the toughest business of the planet, if you will, and it requires you understanding it in depth before taking any decisions with your capital. So please do more research and consult a professional financial advisor before taking any decision, before taking your own decision in the end. As I said, Stallion Discoveries is an exploration company. Their market cap is at around $19 million right now at the time of recording of this video, which is spread over 91 million shares outstanding. Counting options and warrants on top of that, that would bring it to a little over 101 million fully diluted shares. Stallion has no less than 23 exploration claims throughout the Athabasca Basin with a total surface of almost 750,000 acres and a focus on the western side of the basin, which is important. We're going to be talking about that because this is sort of where your NexGen, Denison, Fission, and F3s are. This is also where their largest project lies. It's also the largest continuous uranium project in the basin, and that's also what makes up the majority of Stallion's holding, by the way. So this large project that they have on the western side of the basin, sort of deep into the basin, is almost 700,000 acres. This is a very early stage exploration asset, though, that we're talking about here, the uranium asset specifically. So the company hasn't drilled anything to date, but they've recently done some geophysics and all of that ground. So including, I believe magnetics, electromagnetics, and a VTEM survey. And again, on all that ground. So it was quite large. The results are pending, so we don't know exactly what's going to come out of there right now. But whatever comes out of there is hopefully going to be used to identify drill targets. And if there's money, and hopefully if the weather allows it, of course, they can drill a few holes once the mud, I guess, that sits on top of the basin freezes over later this year. So next to the uranium assets, as I mentioned, there are two gold exploration assets that are in the early stage of exploration as well. One of them is in Nevada and the other one is in Idaho. I am not yet clear on what the plan is with these assets, but I'm hoping we'll get to discuss those in here again, as I said. So this is also probably a good time for me to shut up and welcome Drew, CEO. So Drew Zimmerman, thank you for being here today, sir.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Antonio, and happy to be here and look forward to be able to discuss in a little bit more depth everything you just went through there. But it was a great overview. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, well, the pleasure is all mine, and I'm looking forward to this because it's an interesting, relatively new company. I've been preheating the barbecue before we jumped on, but it's not quite at the temperature that I need it yet. So let's maybe take it sort of slowly from the top here. You're a new company. Your focus on uranium is actually new because you bought the uranium exploration assets at the beginning of this year. And I guess to kick it off, maybe a two-folded question. Why did you decide to enter the uranium space now, and how much did that enter into the space cost you?
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, we are new in the uranium space. Our first kickoff was, I believe, January 6th with our first acquisition this year, followed January 12th. If I can remember those dates, they'll be close if they're not exact. But those were 100% ownership. So again, we do have the two gold assets. We can get into those later. But through all of sort of 2022, we continued to do further due diligence on projects. It was a desire of mine and the team to get into the clean energy space. We obviously see that as a great place to be in the years ahead. And for us, uranium was definitely an area that we really wanted to get into. And part of that was some of the key team members that we have at Stallion, some of my largest individual shareholders, have had a tremendous amount of success in the basin. One of our board of advisors has Stephen Stanley on it, who was the original CEO of Hathor Exploration, which found the Rough Rider deposit and eventually sold out to Rio Tinto for $650 million. So those three large shareholders, really understand the Athabasca Basin. They really like the uranium narrative, and are key shareholders that allow us to look and try and create value over the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years as we take on these exploration efforts. So it was an easier switch, or a bit of a pivot, I guess, from just being a standalone gold exploration into the Athabasca. And then again, once we sort of understood that and started doing due diligence on different projects, when we found the projects that we kind of did at a quick 1-2 at the beginning of this year, it just made that much more sense. We really do believe the western side of the Athabasca is the underexplored area. So as an exploration company, I want to be looking where, people haven't looked all that much or all that recently. So a lot of the ground that we have, hasn't really had any work on it in at least the last 15 years. And even then that work was, maybe not done as well as we think it could be done now. And especially as technology gets better with surveys that we have available, that sort of thing. So that was sort of the main reason to sort of switch over. And then once we did and had those 100% owned projects, we were about 78,000 hectares. The ability to start discussions with ATHA came soon after. And then after ATHA went public, being able to announce that joint venture, which we just signed the definitive agreement on a week or so ago, it was another huge step. I mean, that made us the single largest continuous land package for exploration in the Western Basin. So again, it was very much built on the thesis that we think the uranium market's going to be a great place to be for the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. The Athabasca Basin is the very best real estate for uranium anywhere in the world, bar none. And if the western side was, underexplored and had high potential, again, some very big deposits there with NexGen and Fission and the new discovery with F3, then we want to try and tie up a lot of that real estate, which we've been able to do and do on decent terms. So our own projects, just to get back into that, was a total for those first two that we bought 100% of was $700,000 in cash and $3 million in shares. So to be able to get close to 80,000 hectares for under $1 million, own them outright, no royalties or anything like that on them, we think was a great transaction. And we had money in the treasury to be able to do it coming into 2023, which was something to be said, because 2022 was not a fun year for a lot of junior companies, us included. But again, keeping things pretty lean and mean and being pretty efficient in what we were doing on our gold assets allowed us to have that treasury and the ability to jump into the uranium space like we did.
You said it was a pivot. Is this the company's new focus right now? Like, should you be looked at as a uranium company who happens to have two gold assets, or are you a multi-project exploration company?
No, I think we really have pivoted, and I try and say that 90 to 95% of our time, energy, and capital will be going towards our uranium projects in the Athabasca Basin, and part of that, and might be a good sort of transition to talk about some of our gold assets. It's not that we don't think they are good assets. I think they're tremendous, and I think they will create a lot of value in the somewhat near term. But one, the gold market needs a little bit more love, so that was sort of the bigger fundamental overview. And two, our gold projects are both neighboring, absolutely tremendous deposits that are doing things themselves to create a lot of value for those companies that we think we can benefit from. So we think we can give a lift to our gold projects just based on what's happening next door, and some smaller scale sort of exploration efforts that we think can create value there. So the ability to have a sort of a low capex strategy, focus our capex and energy on the Athabasca, while at the same time have a potential lift in value on the gold assets without having to do a lot ourselves near term, goes a long way. So that was sort of one of the reasons why it made sense that we hang on to them near term, because we think some value can be created there, and that will give us some optionality down the road when we think the market or other companies will give a higher value to those gold assets. Then we can look at the optionality of what we do with them then, and hang on to them near term. But sort of, I call them sort of aces in my back pocket a little bit, that I think we can get some value from at some point, but just not right now. But being able to sit on them without a lot of capital expenditure near term helps with that strategy. That's for sure.
I do want to talk about your gold assets, and we're going to talk about them a little bit later on. What I'm more interested about is obviously your uranium assets, and you called that part of the Athabasca Basin. You said that it's unexplored, so maybe you can talk to me a little bit about how you even got to buy those assets to begin with, because the Athabasca Basin, as you've mentioned, is just prime real estate for uranium exploration. There is already a bunch of high market cap companies with enough capital around you, as I mentioned at the beginning. That's your Denison's, NexGen's. Fission has that AUM facility. Also at the beginning of 2023, when you acquired those assets, uranium had already been in a bull run for about 5 years, actually over 5 years at that point. So it's not like nobody was paying attention to uranium, and it's not like the companies around you were starved for cash either. So how did you get your hands on those assets and nobody else beat you to it?
Yeah, it's always a very good question, especially when you are going into what is a highly competitive space for assets that we think are sought after. And I won't say unexplored either. We say underexplored. There definitely has been some historical exploration efforts, but yeah, when it comes to those, I mean, one of the companies that we bought and really started our due diligence on was a company called First Uranium, which themselves had actually pivoted more into the phosphate business. So they were sitting on claims, and if you know how exploration claims in the basin work, or in Saskatchewan work, you can stake them, and then you have 2 years where you sort of have to spend a certain amount of money, and then it's a year after that. So when First Uranium was sitting on these claims, deciding that they wanted to go into the phosphate business, they kind of were just sitting on them without having any exploration dollars being spent on them. So they were nearing the end of their sort of free 2-year period where you needed to be able to do work on them in pretty short order. And because we still had money in our treasury coming in to the beginning of 2023, we were able to, one, buy the assets, and two, commit to being able to do the work that needed to be done near term to keep those claims in good standing. So it was also, as with any team, being able to have resources with the team behind me that's had experience in the basin, being able to sort of make a connect or two as you go and try and get these deals all the way across the line goes a long way as well. So when a few other people were looking at these assets, we were able to step in and make sure we were getting connected with the right people. And we did go fairly aggressively and went fairly quickly to tie up the assets, because we really did want them. And I think that's really how it came all the way through to being done. I think, that is one of the things we do talk about is a company like Stallion that's been able to come into the uranium space in the Athabasca Basin in 7 months, put together 300,000 hectares or 3,000 square kilometers throughout the basin, and in 7 months shows that we do have the ability as a team to be able to get deals done and get deals done in a very competitive environment.
Is your idea to also be a close-ology play, basically, because you keep buying all that land and it is close to other deposits, so it does look like it. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think when you're starting with exploration, I mean, the old rule is, the best place for a mine is right next to an existing mine type of thing. It does give you some level of confirmation that there is the mineralization that you're looking for in that direct area. Obviously, we look at other geological information that we think gives us confidence in the land package that we're picking up. And with our 100% owned assets, yes, being right along F3's PLN project, where they have the recent high grade discovery. It's just north of where Arrow and Triple R are as well. And then when we were looking at bringing in the Atha piece, again, the ability to take what was sort of multiple different claim blocks throughout the West and combine them into a single unit. We think as we move forward will give us better sort of economies of scale and efficiencies of being able to have one big project that we can kind of pull on for doing our work and keeping sort of key target areas sort of within the company, rather than having us do some work on a piece of land and then have our border come up and before we know it, that somebody else doing the work right next door, where that might be the more ideal target area. So again, with the strategy of going out and picking up so much land, it was very much a strategy of knowing that the initial stages are airborne geophysics. Again, it's really the only way you can cover that kind of area of ground. So we wanted to cast an incredibly wide net and be able to look at the best potential target zones that we think are available in the western side of the basin. And as you mentioned, sort of starting where the existing discoveries are and then moving more into the basin as well. So a little bit more depth into the basin. But again, with that depth comes the fact that, less and less people have looked there or looked there efficiently and effectively. So, again, just looking for that potential that maybe has been overlooked is what we're really going after.
But if you like this land package as it is, and why wouldn't you just why would you want to expand the footprint and not focus only on what you have now and then sort of look to drill that as you are on that package? But why acquire even more land given that you already have the largest continuous project in the basin?
Sorry, I mean, from where we are right now, we're definitely digesting and working on what we have. So not talking about, continued growth and expansion from this stage, unless there was an incredibly compelling target or land package we're looking at. But for the most part, we're very happy with the land package we put together, and we realize how big it is and how much work we have in front of us. So
you're not necessarily looking to add more acres.
Exactly. Yeah. At this stage, we think close to 750,000 acres is a pretty good go.
I would agree. Thank you for the clarification, by the way. Let's talk about what you're looking for then with those deposits. As I said, you are focused on the western Athabasca, which is important. It's an important difference. You also have some other assets on the other end of the basin too. But on the western side, that's an important difference because around you, we mostly see a certain type of discovery. We see high-grade deposits that are also on the deeper end. Some companies have deposits that start shallower, but most of their deposit, the biggest part of their deposit with Fission specifically, it's deep. And also another example, of course, being NexGen's Arrow, which is extremely high grade, but also very deep. However, your project, specifically again on the western side of the Athabasca Basin, is a lot deeper into the basin. When I say deeper into the basin, I mean more to the north of the basin than your neighbors, basically. So what I'm trying to figure out is what you're looking for, as I said. So what is it that you're looking for? Is it deep, high grade, or that you can maybe sell to someone else this cycle? Or are you hoping for, shallow, low grade deposits, maybe something that can be an add-on, sort of a satellite deposit to an already existing something? Yeah, there's many options, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, when you are an early stage exploration company, as we are, I mean, the best thing that you can do is keep an open mind to what you're looking for and what you're going to find, and really just follow the breadcrumbs, so to speak, in that sense. So for us, understanding, especially with all the work that Denison has done with, ISR in the basin and the potential for that, the fact that, we think the economics of a deeper deposit don't necessarily have to be based on building out a big underground mine, as NexGen and Fission are doing. And then at the same time, even though we are looking at depth, again, because there's been less work and maybe less survey work that is effective at looking at that depth, the potential to really find something there that could be big. I mean, when, Key Lake was going, or Rabbit Lake, MacArthur and Cigar, those sort of areas were thought to be deeper as well. And they ended up being sort of the big monster deposits in the east. So again, the fact that, the initial discoveries that have been made in the Western Basin are sort of near the edge of the basin. So again, we're at the south end of the basin in the west. So with NexGen and Fission, with a lot of their land being south of us, again, it is easier and more economical near term to find those discoveries and bring them into development, as both companies are looking to do when they are near that edge of the basin. But again, the potential, we think, if you analog what happened in the east, as you move forward in time, the ability to find something that is deeper, potentially could be bigger as well, similar to as it was in the east, or again, even if it's the same size as what we're seeing with NexGen. Obviously, that's a significant deposit with Arrow. You can kind of look at the economics once you've made those discoveries, but again, we're also very firm believers that, even at $56 uranium price, things will make a lot of sense. But if we're at $80, $90, then, things are obviously much more economic, even if they are deeper as well. So just really going after areas that have been, overlooked for maybe reasons of economics and also reasons of exploration capabilities that are just getting better and better and better.
But the main geological thesis, that's sort of what I was after, is still unconformity related deposits, still on that side. Yeah. Okay, sure. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still looking at the same sort of roadmap that a lot of the companies throughout the basin, but especially in the West, have followed, where, you're looking for your key conductors, whether there's cross faulting areas, that sort of thing. We also have, a bigger working theory. Again, I'm not a geologist, so I won't get into the depths of that, but a big later stage structure was the Clearwater domain that kind of cuts right between where F3 uranium is. So F3 would be on sort of the north and the west side of the big Clearwater domain, and Patterson Lake Trend is on the south. So that could be a later stage big heat source for mobilizing the uranium in the area. And again, a significant amount of our properties sort of run on both sides of the Clearwater domain as it sort of runs up towards the historical area where Shea Creek is, not quite as far as Clough Lake, but again, so the potential to be looking on both sides of that, if that was something that sort of pushed uranium out to the sides, if we're going to be looking along the edges of that, being able to find conductive areas and structures, that's a pretty exciting look that we think is worth following up on.
To be able to go look for something there, though, because you mentioned the Clearwater, and then instantly the Clearwater Dene Nation popped into my mind, which is First Nations that are around there. Your project is again, as you said, huge. So you're dealing with multiple First Nations there. Have you been able to consult anybody, or are people happy with you being there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, with the 100% owned land that we've already gone out and done some work on, had discussions with the Clearwater Dene Nation. Again, we're a very early stage exploration company, so there isn't a formal agreement we need to be jumping into near term. But again, just trying to be very open and transparent and willing to work with them. And again, it's a relationship where, especially with the Clearwater Dene Nation, they know that the mining industry can be a big benefit to the local communities and provide jobs. Obviously, they've got an IBA signed with NexGen already, so they are very understanding. They're a great group of guys that I've been able to get to know over the last several months as we've been starting out in the Athabasca Basin. So yeah, it's about building those relationships early. And I think that's something that Stallion has worked towards, to try and, start early and be open and transparent. And again, just like any working relationship, that it needs to start and gets better over time.
How far can you take this exploration program before having to put down something on paper with them specifically?
Yeah, with them specifically, again, I think, we're at the stage where they understand what we're trying to do and understand what our next steps are. So as we move into drilling and trying to get some of those programs going, again, that is, where at a provincial level, they have a duty to consult. But again, if we've already been working with the First Nations groups, hopefully they're willing to sort of work with us and work with us in terms of the government relations and that duty to consult and our permitting. And again, it's just understanding that, we're willing to do the steps and put things in place that, make the environmental impact as little as possible, and, be very cognizant of different times of, hunting and when migratory patterns happen and all that sort of thing as well. So when you start, building that up and they understand that, you're willing to work with them for the benefit of everybody, then I think that goes a long way.
What about permitting, as in government permitting? How far does that get you?
Yeah, again, I mean, with such a large land package, obviously we're going to be, permitting our best areas. So we'll have, some of our initial data coming back from Condor Consulting. We're working with them for the interpretation and targeting of our initial geophysics data. So once we start picking out our key target areas that we want to go after, that's when we need to sort of decide which those target areas are, how big they are, and then start stepping into the permitting for the drilling of those target areas.
Okay, but so it sounds to me that really before getting the interpretations on the geophysics back, there's not much that you can say. Like, you've probably not spoken to drillers yet because you don't have drill targets, so you don't know exactly how much you'll be drilling. So I'm assuming here, stop me if I'm wrong, of course. But then that's also probably when you will know more specifically exactly what you're going to be doing, how much of it, and how much that's going to cost, right?
Exactly. With drilling, depths, obviously how long the holes are changes prices in a very big way. Everything's sort of done on a per meter basis. So where those targets are, as you may note, we have some targets that are much more to the south, which is near the edge of the basin, which will be less deep. Whereas if we think some of the key targets are a little bit further north, the ability to drill there obviously gets more expensive. So again, having to set out a plan with, a lot of different caveats in place. But yeah, we've had, many of the drill companies in the area reach out. Again, the good thing is, they've been drilling throughout the Athabasca Basin for, 60 plus years. And there's some good companies there that have gotten very good at it. And, the western side is definitely different to drill in than the eastern side. So again, fortunate that, Fission, NexGen, F3 have done, a ton of drilling over the last decade. So you do have some experienced people, and those will be the contractors that we'll be looking to work with when the time comes.
Thank you for the overview. I think you've done a good job giving me the overview here. I think I'm getting a better idea of where you're at and what you're doing. Now, I do want to talk more about money. Someone told me that if you really want to understand how a company works, you need to understand how they're spending capital. And so I want to talk about, well, first of all, maybe we can talk about how much money you have right now, because you raised $4 million, if I'm not mistaken, earlier this year in February, right after you got the uranium assets. And then you're trying to raise another $4 million as we speak through flow-through financing. Now, but that financing is not closing. It's not closed yet. So what's happening there?
No, not open on a financing right now. So we announced that on June 1st, a flow-through financing. But given market conditions, how they were, liquidity just wasn't there as we thought when we launched, which is why we launched. But then on the June 19th press release, we announced the canceling of that financing. Fortunate that we were able to do so because of the $4 million financing that we'd done in February. So the financing launched in June was going to be only flow through and charity flow through. Again, just given the work that we're doing in the Athabasca and the fact that as of the beginning of this year, we had Canadian assets, being able to utilize the charity flow through structure and the flow through structures to be less dilutive for our existing shareholders, because you're able to raise at a premium to where your shares are trading, was the whole big push behind that financing, was to use flow through dollars and less dilutive dollars instead of using the hard dollars that we had in the treasury. But given the market conditions, and rather than leaving a financing open that can really overhang sort of any potential of your stock in the near term, we decided to cancel because of the fact that we thought we had the money in the treasury to be able to continue on with the efforts that we already had in place, not embarking on any new monster initiatives as far as exploration, but carry us through well into through the end of this year and into the beginning of next year, without big new efforts, but at the same time being able to wait and see for market conditions to get a little better so that we can be a little bit more aggressive in our timeline of exploration, because again, we think this underlying uranium market dictates an exploration company that is working quite quickly and trying to get a lot done, and the land package that we have, we think also dictates trying to get out there and do as much work as possible in the near term. So a financing later on this year would definitely help with that. But again, we do have sort of enough money in the treasury now to sort of keep things going, and especially as we're going through the interpretation and targeting and permitting phase to get ready for drilling, we've got the funds available for that.
How much money are we talking about here?
Yeah, as of today, I mean, we're called 1.6, a little over 1.6 million in the bank.
Okay, 1.6. So there's been 2.4 million spent since February on, I guess, the geophysics. What else?
Yeah, we've had some costs, obviously in the US. We stepped out and did some more brand awareness through the beginning of this year, given our move into the uranium space, and given that uranium is not in the Stallion Discoveries name, trying to get more awareness brought into Stallion being in the uranium space and getting some attention there. We did the significant, obviously, geophysics with geotech to fly 80,000 hectares. So that was the biggest piece of it, obviously, not cheap. And then also working with Condor, those expenses. So a lot of exploration expenses, and then again, sort of the general business expenses that come. We added a part-time investor relations to our team. So that's Lisa Stewart. She's been absolutely great in helping me over the last couple of months since she's joined. And then also just recently adding Darren Slagowski as our VPX of Canada. Again, somebody who's got a decade worth of experience in the basin and, spent 7 years with Pure Point on the Spitfire, and sort of saw the up and coming work that became both the Triple R and the Arrow deposit, as well as the Spitfire. So a lot of experience there to be able to help lead our efforts in the western side of the basin. So.
Lisa is the one who made this interview happen, by the way, so shout out to her. She's one of the few IRs who answer emails to someone who wants to grill the CEO. So yeah, shout out to her. She does a good job, in my opinion, my experience so far. So
yeah.
Good
I'll
get.
echo that. Yeah.
You maybe we can talk about G&A. Obviously, G&A is important, and I noticed that in the management information circular that you're taking about $10K a month in total comp last year, 2022. That is, which is it's comparable to companies of your size. So I like that this is not a paycheck grab as you would have in some other companies. And there's not many people on your payroll, actually. Well, I mean, management related and directors. I think it was, so in 2022, it was you and a CFO who I believe was taking something of less than half of your pay. And then now we have the VP of X and an IR person there as well. So is that staying that way, or do you think G&A is going to evolve through 2023?
I mean, it will evolve, and I will add, we do have our president and VPX of the U.S., Bill Breen, again, still a key person in our team, and he's really leaned in on the work that we're doing in the Athabasca Basin, while continuing to do the little bit of work that we are doing on our gold assets as well. The gold assets, obviously, where he's got a lot of experience, but no, we've really structured the company to be very lean and mean, and in that sense, try and keep the absolute fixed costs low and be able to toggle the variable, because in this market, you never know what you're going to get. So if you really build up the fixed cost side of what you're doing, then when times do get a little tougher, you get into a pretty sticky situation. So being able to really sort of lean in when we've got some money and the projects that dictate going out there and doing that, we can engage a lot of consultants, as far as geology teams that get out and get on the ground, rather than having to bring those in house. And the mining industry is set up quite well for that. There are a lot of contractors that sort of work in that basis, and it is, again, once you start to get to a certain level, it does make sense to start bringing more people in house, because it can be more cost effective over the longer term. But again, those are at least sort of 12-month hires, if not longer, where when we're doing consulting work and we've got a field program that's going to be 2 or 3 months, it really makes sense just to be able to staff up sort of instantly to 5 or 6 geos with a consulting group, that only come on for a few months, that are very specific for your target that you're going after with certain deliverables. So near term, we intend to stay pretty lean on the top end as we are, and sort of have the people that we have in place now be able to pick up working groups when we need to dive in and do sort of project specific things.
That's probably also when you ramp up marketing, I'm assuming, because I think you have a Swiss group that you're working with. If I'm not wrong, then you had another company that you had engaged for sort of help you spread the word. Basically, that was around 6K a month, 5K a month, maybe, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you can walk me through. Is that it? And what's your marketing budget, as well as exactly what you're going to be doing and what results you're hoping to get? Because you're talking to the Swiss group. Do you want to diversify your shareholder base, get Europeans on? What do you hope to get out of your marketing efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So me and you first ran into each other in Frankfurt. We brought on SRC just after that. Again, being able to diversify our investor base to Europe, we think would be incredibly helpful. We do have a Frankfurt listing, so the ability for them to participate with us there, not just on the venture exchange, is big. And then, working with a group that does content creation for us across our socials, knowing that is more and more important, to be able to keep people engaged across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, that sort of thing, and then also be able to have them work with other content that comes up, so content like this, for that group to be able to utilize, and again continue to sort of amplify what we're doing. And beyond that, it really is a bit of a toggle for a junior company. So when we think we are hitting a busier period, as we get these near-term geophysical results back, and if we get drill targets and we want to go out drilling, then maybe toggling up and doing some more spending where we're getting more interviews, whether they're paid interviews or paid articles, so that people really understand our story and what we're doing, and how close we are to the potential that we think we can have, and really make that difference for investors. So again, I think the very best case scenario is obviously what's happened with F3 uranium, where you see one drill hole in the basin, especially when you hit ultra high grade like they did. Knock on wood for us, that you can make a significant change in the market cap of the company and the structure of what you're doing. So that's when we want to be a little bit more active and aggressive and up our marketing budget. But especially like now, where market conditions on the junior side are still a little bit tough. We're going into summer, so it's July and August, and people are doing more traveling and away from their office and that sort of thing. We tend to toggle things back down and try and use other channels. And this interview is a great example of it, where we're coming out, meeting new people, getting new eyeballs without doing a lot of spend right now, and just taking the time to try and share our story.
I like that. I like when you're getting your head down and you're cutting on expenses that make sense to be cutting. Well, F3 was doing their fair share of marketing during every market condition, but that's a different story there. So what else? We talked about exploration, we talked about G&A, we talked about marketing. Oh, well, are there any more options? Because you said you made options payments for the US. One of those projects you own 100%, but I believe the Richmond Mountain Gold project is not completely paid off, right?
No. So Richmond, we own our Idaho project, our Horse 7 project, 100% at this point. And EMX has the option, or we have the option with EMX, for our Richmond Mountain project. So that is something that we still have.
EMX has 4% net smelter royalty, by the way, I think, on that project, and you have the option to buy 2.5 of that back, right?
1.5.
1.5. Okay.
Of that, yeah. So it's a 5-year option earn-in, work commitments, and some small annual payments, and then milestone payments, and obviously with EMX and their business model, looking to get all the way to that royalty at the back end is what they're ultimately after. And the fact that we were able to get that project while gold prices were low, we were just above 1,600 when we were making those negotiations. So and again, right next to us was i-80's Ruby Hill mine, that they really hadn't started putting out any results on or anything like that. So the excitement of that area hadn't really picked up on, which I think allowed us to get a great deal on that project. And we weren't fighting with other people for it at that time. Not a lot of other people were looking to take on more gold assets. So with that, we will be doing the geophysics survey on that project. That's going to be deeper MT survey that will look to commence probably second half of August. But again, being able to take sort of smaller CapEx projects and initiatives that we think still provides a significant amount of value, given again what i-80's done. So i-80 will be running a similar survey as we are, and then again that crew will sort of jump across the highway, because that's how far it is to our project, and run that same sort of survey. So what we're looking to see is a continuation of what i-80 has been finding with their new polymetallic CRD discovery and high-grade gold deposits, that we think the mineralization follows on our side as well. So
what I'm wondering though is, why are you even keeping these projects at this point? Not that they're bad projects or anything like that. There's plenty. I mean, as you explained, there's plenty of exploration to be done there. You're close to Ewan Downey with i-80 there. He seems very ambitious in that region. So it is like prime real estate that sooner or later, if he finds something on his side of the highway, he's going to give you money for your project. I mean, that's straightforward. I can understand that. But why are you keeping those projects at the current time and putting focus and money on them, instead of just go and focus on your huge land package that's uranium related? That's sort of what I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it's still all about creating shareholder value. And we have done a lot of work on our Idaho project, again, right next to Perpetua Resources. They've got 6 million ounces of gold in the ground, and we think going into the end of this year, they're going to get the record decision to build, their draft record decision, official record decision into next year. But even that draft record decision, if they get sort of the initial green light to go ahead and build a brand new mine and mill right next door, that'll be producing over 4 million ounces of gold over a 15-year life, and for the first several years be producing 30% of the U.S. antimony needs, and the U.S. has zero antimony production right now. So again, a very key piece of national infrastructure for the United States, with antimony being a critical mineral. So the fact that we have historical drilling that shows pretty good high grade shallow oxide, we had over 1.5 grams, over 35 meters. We followed that up to prove that there's a 2.8 kilometer strike length of, structurally controlled anomalous gold. We've done a CSAMT survey. We've got drill targets. We've got a 19 pad drill plan with, zero disturbance. It's run off old mining roads. So we're in the process of getting that drill permit. And again, we think, not wanting to do anything on it near term, given our time, energy, and capital is going towards the Athabasca, but having a drill permitted project that's, got proven historical gold workings on it right next to a brand new mine and mill being built, goes a long way and creates a lot of value for our shareholders without a whole lot of spend in, the next 9, 12, 18 months. We think that projects can create a lot of value. And again, the similar sort of thesis down in Nevada, by doing this survey and allowing, some more confidence in that piece of land, with i-80 continuing to do a lot of work next door. I mean, they've got 7.5 million ounces of gold there. They're going to be putting out a new resource later this year. I think that number gets significantly bigger. And then obviously the new excitement around the polymetallic side, where they've got high grade zinc, lead, and silver, along with all that gold, makes it a pretty compelling district. They just took over Paycore Minerals to their south for about 105 million Canadian. The fact that we're just on the eastern side, we think can create a significant amount of value if i-80 really looks to expand that into a bigger district play, if that mineralization does come across the highway and provides a good reason for them to do so. Then we're getting some good value for our clients that way. And on the other side, prior to getting the uranium assets, Stallion did just have these 2 gold assets. So we think if the gold market warms back up again and the junior market at the same time, the potential even maybe to spin out the gold assets on their own again creates value for our shareholders that way. So given that we can, keep, maintain, and do a little bit of work on both of these projects for under 400,000 and in a 12-month period, we think that sort of call option price on the projects and the gold market and the junior space is well worth it, especially when you take into account what both neighbors are actively working towards, spending the money doing the work that we just don't have to right now.
You told me you're not a geologist, but you keep giving me the geologist answer, which is oftentimes it depends. And I joke about it, but it's true. I mean, it depends. You're early stage in all these projects, so it depends what comes out of the ground. As far as I understand it, so the notes that I've taken here, 2023, what you're doing is focus on the uranium assets, obviously the joint venture with Atha, so you're going to be spending some money there. But more importantly, or at least to me, is getting the results or the interpretation of the geophysics that you just flew. That's going to get you. That's going to help you define new targets, and hopefully, that's right on time. Hopefully, the market's with you. You can raise capital, and hopefully, I guess I'm drilling. I'm assuming I'm not drilling. You're hopefully drilling. So yeah. So it's work with Atha, get the results on the interpretation of the geophysics, target definition, and then hopefully, if there's money and time, drilling later this year. And then you're doing geophysics on the gold assets as well. That about sums up your 2023.
Yeah, that would be it for sure.
Okay,
it's been busy on the deal side, obviously through the first 7 months, and now and on the exploration side, obviously with. I think it was about 2 months we had a helicopter in the air doing our 80,000 hectares that we own outright. But yeah, with that comes just reams and reams and reams of data that first was processed by Geotech and now getting reprocessed and worked with Condor. So yeah, those results will be exciting and the near-term catalyst. And then as with any exploration company, and what a lot of investors want to know about is, when does that first drill start turning? We think we're creating a lot of value, taking a very underexplored land package and creating, targets and potential target areas on it. So creating values, taking the full unknown and bringing it up in a level of confidence we think creates value. But ultimately, we do know that people want to see drill results, and then in the Athabasca, you get the scintillometers first, and then the assays that come later.
Yeah, yeah. Scintillometers are interesting to me. The market tends to get kind of crazy over there, but yeah. Anyways, well, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of there. Just realized we haven't talked much about you personally, Drew, because you're a finance guy. You got your CFA. You've worked for a broker for a while back there before moving to the space. So why the jump to the exploration space in 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I spent a decade at a national brokerage firm, a specialization in commodities and derivatives. And I think, with a lot of people, as you get a decade or so into a career, you really want to look at what challenges you, what's new. And I did want to get challenged and change, what I was doing to some degree, but still be able to sort of utilize the networks that I'd built throughout Vancouver. And the opportunity came to come over to Stallion at inception, and be able to build something that hopefully creates a lot of value for our shareholders, but really have a longer term time horizon than what you can get. It gets a little shorter on the brokerage side. So to be able to look to build a company and create significant value over a multi-year time span was a pretty intriguing reason for me. And again, in 2020, thinking the gold market was going to keep going, which it obviously didn't at that time, fell off in the years after. So maybe mistimed that a little bit to jump over to a company that only had or was about to have a primary gold asset. But at the same time, gold rebounded well, even though the equity side hasn't. But yeah, just really the ability to start something right from the kind of ground up and build. I grew up in northern Alberta as a farm boy, and a lot of hay farming, and you like to work with your hands, and did a lot of construction work in the summers as well. So being able to build something and look back at the end of the day and see what you've done was always incredibly satisfying. And I think being in Vancouver, you get a little bit trapped into moving paper from one place to another sometimes, but again, being able to jump out and really build something and be able to look back at the end of 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, we'll see where this goes, and look back and have some gratification about what you built. I think was one of the bigger underpinnings to make the move.
Oh, I do get that, and I'm actually surprised you lasted 10 years at one job, because I am, by the way, unfortunately, Gen Z. So next to having being born with orange hair in post-communist Eastern Europe, God decided to also make me Gen Z, just to close the circle there, make it as worse as possible. But what I was saying is that we often get advised to change professions every 2 years, change careers every 2 years, or change employers every 2 years. So I like seeing people who stick to the jobs for longer and then do something that is like meaningful, not just change your career for the sake of changing. And so good on you there. You did not find this company, so you were not the founder of this company. You did not found this company, excuse me. So you're not the founder of this company, which means that you don't have too many shares to your name. There's not being too much open market buying. So did you have any plans for open market buys, or do you have any options, incentive plans within the company that's going to sort of align you closer to shareholders over this and the coming years?
Yeah. When I first came over, again, as you say, not the founder, the vehicle was already there, and the initial funds to sort of kick off Stallion had already been raised. So my incentive package sort of builds with options over time. And again, my lowest price options are 34.5 cents. So, we're under that now, unfortunately, but again, the sort of bigger lever comes with our share price and our shareholders doing a lot better. And I do think that really helps to align a younger CEO with the company. And as far as coming in and buying in the open market, I mean, that always gets a little trickier, and especially when we've been active on the deal side, and when you're allowed to buy with those windows. So I I myself wrote a $50,000 check into the last financing that we did, and we'll look to continue to participate in financings. Again, as you mentioned earlier in this interview, I'm not getting paid a whole whack load of money to be a CEO and just take that paycheck home. I want to be, aligned with the shareholders. I am more excited about the success of Stallion than I ever have been before. So being able to participate in shares and the growth and value of those shares goes a long way for me, and I want to be able to do more of that. But also understanding, I'm not a 55-year-old that's been in the industry for a long time that can write the monster checks themselves, or in the mining space we've seen guys that can just fund the companies themselves. That will be a dream and a goal to get to, but at this stage still just building and again doing what I can for myself, my family, and the shareholders. I mean, again, knowing my shareholders well and knowing that everything I do is spending shareholder dollars, I think goes a long way. And I think as certain shareholders and big shareholders sit down with me and we have these discussions, they understand that as well, that we know that as executives of a public company, you are spending your money, your shareholders' money, and you need to be doing that efficiently and effectively. And everything needs to be looked at from sort of an ROI point of view, and I think that keeps us in good stead. And we're coming up on a couple months shy of 3 years, and Stallion's raised a cumulative $9 million. So to be able to put together the complete package that we have, the 2 gold assets, all the work we've done in Idaho, and the package in the Athabasca, and still have 1.6 in the bank on top of that, I think is a testament to being frugal and being smart with where we put our money and energy and effort. So aligning myself as best I can. Obviously, I know everybody always looks and say, well, you don't have enough shares, and it's like, well, I also wasn't at the founding where I've got boatloads of 1 cent paper. I mean, the paper I was buying was 25 cents in our last financing, and my options are priced higher than that. So
what do you mean 1 cent paper? It's like a millionth of a cent paper if you're a founder. That's all the rage these days. No, but you're right. You're what are you, 32, 35 years old, something along those lines?
36. So thank 36. You. I appreciate it. That's the HD cameras maybe hide my wrinkles a little bit.
As well, you've turned on the zoom thing. There's a filter on Zoom that can hide your wrinkles. I've seen it. No, but you're right. I mean, you've got plenty of time to obviously build up your own capital, and I don't want necessarily to have it's not. The market is very polarized on this. Like, you have a lot of shares, everybody's happy. You don't have a lot of shares, everybody's not happy. But a personal situation should be taken into account. And that's why I'm asking about the plan, because you don't have to be a millionaire or multi-millionaire or centimillionaire CEO to be a good CEO. You can be a good CEO and not yet have built your fortune to a place where you can take off half the company on entry or something along those lines. So it is important for me to know that you do have a plan to align yourself with shareholders more closely. So that's where that question comes from. But with all due respect to a personal situation, I do take that into account. So I guess last question, because you almost have to go here. It's another mandatory question for the barbecue, actually. You've made the bull case. You like your company, you like your assets, of course. Otherwise, you wouldn't be running it. You wouldn't be talking to me here. But nobody and nothing obviously is perfect. So what are some downsides? What are some risks? What's something that keeps you up at night as this is sort of your first venture as a CEO? What worries you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of my job as a CEO, is to do the worrying, to have the long nights where you're not sleeping and you're kind of tossing and turning. I mean, with anything on the exploration side, and especially in the Athabasca Basin, as a lot of people know, I mean, they are incredibly economic deposits. When they're found, they tend to be high grade and can be quite large, but because of the shape of some of the structures of them, they can be quite difficult to find, especially if there's some depth involved. So, when you kind of do everything that you can, the full aspect that is out of your hands of, exploratory drilling work, is one thing, because, you can have all the best laid plans, and if you drill the holes that you think should hit, and they're really just not, that can really take the wind out of your sails. And as an exploration company, that sort of feeds into the second side. Is we are funded by our shareholders, and it's sort of a belief in a common prosperity. If we all work together, we can accomplish certain tasks and certain milestones. But if that confidence starts to waver and you're not able to access the capital that you need to because of certain things that are going on with your own company, or I think more importantly, again, what's out of my hands and is something you worry about, is just, where are general, economic conditions going to take us? I mean, we've had, big market pundits talking about going into a recession for the last year now, and it's always sort of just around the corner. And I think that's kept some investors more on the edge of their seat than they have been before, and kept them out of the junior space over this last year. I mean, we've seen the junior space have a lot less liquidity than we've seen in past years. So, that is something that you worry about when you can put together the best laid plans. They do need to be financed, and having that risk capital available to you goes a long way. So it's part of what you worry about. And again, why I take time out of my day almost every day to do some form of shareholder engagements, whether it's these interviews or direct conversations with shareholders, that sort of thing, so that you can try and keep that confidence high, try and keep that ability to finance there. But again, there's things that are always out of our control, and that's also where being sort of a lean, mean, a bit of a frugal, fixed cost team allows us to be a little flexible and a little patient when need be, so that we can kind of, hopefully get past some things we can't control if they do come up.
You're mentioning a good number of risks here that some of those are out of your control. So you have economic risk. Obviously, that's something that we all take when we're investing. Geological risk is very obvious risk that people don't really think too much about, but you're taking that when you're going into the exploration industry. It's just a matter of fact. Financing risk also. I mean, this industry burns through capital easily, so it is part of the risk that investors are taking on. So you're making it's good that you're mentioning these risks. So yeah, there's always more to talk about, but I don't like my barbecue well done, so let's maybe close it off here for today, and hopefully we can pick it up again in the future. Maybe when you have those magnetics, electromagnetics, and VTEM surveys back, we can talk about those. Is there something, Drew, that you came here hoping to talk about but I'm failing to bring up?
No, I think we've done a great job to cover the waterfront, and steaks would definitely be well overdone at this point, but maybe we did a little slow barbecue on some chicken or something like that. That could still be tasty at this point. But I appreciate you having me on, Antonio. Love the format here, where we've really been able to get into it, get past that surface level and get into the story and the strategy of what we've been trying to do here at Stallion. And again, looking for that to resonate with shareholders. And again, we think that's something that if they like what we're doing, getting involved. I mean, at our current share price, we think we're a tremendous buy, even just at the market right now, given what we think we've got coming up in the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. So welcome the opportunity to be on, and would love to be back and share the updates.
I have your contact information up on the screen right now, but if people are only listening, that'd be StallionDiscoveries.com, that they can go and learn more about the company. Also, of course, obviously also go to Setter.com and use the company's financial official statements, not only the financial statements, but MD&A and so on and so forth, to do more research. And as I said, Lisa does a good job. She answered my email, so I assume she's going to be answering the emails, and that's lstewart@StallionDiscoveries.com. People want to reach out to that. So yes, Drew, thank you so much for being here again.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And again, another shout out to Lisa for setting this up. Very happy she made it happen.